Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Project Flux Weekly Pulse. This is the second live one we have. Um, last week was the first attempt at this. But don't worry, for those who are listening in a couple of days after the event, we will always publish this also on the Wednesday morning, and then the spotlight also on the Friday morning. So nothing really changes in terms of the content that we're giving out, except for the fact that if you want to, you can listen to us recording it live on the Monday evening, always at about 7:15. So I can see now we're live on YouTube, we're live on Riverside, we're live on Twitch, and I think we're live on LinkedIn as well, which is pretty cool. So whoever's listening in, hello. Don't be shy to send some comments and join in whatever you want to do. But Yoshi, how are you? It's good to be back, isn't it, for the second live weekly pulse?
Yeah, it's a complete trial for us, right? Because you haven't done it before, and you can't really track the engagement on it either. So we just flip between screens.
Yeah, so if you see
Open
me
for
looking away quite a lot, it's because I'm figuring out, we're kind of figuring out what we're doing as we're going, which is pretty cool.
It's
But
good though. We're in the hot seat.
it's in the hot seat.
We
We'll see
can't
how
put
this
out the oven.
pans
It's
out.
ours.
Yeah, exactly. We'll see how it all pans out. I can see on uh, LinkedIn, for instance, the live show is now up and running, and now we just need some guests to come and speak to us. But that's fine. But we'll crack on anyway, and I'll keep trying to check the comments. So don't be afraid to leave some comments and get involved. But let's talk about the week then. So we had quite an interesting week because we got to go to our very first keynote speech, didn't we? We went to the Microsoft AI
hmm
Open Day tour at London Excel, which was a pretty exciting thing to do
hmm
in itself. How did you find it? What was your experience like?
It was useful. I mean, the keynote at the start was quite general, but I think because we're kind of immersed into this quite a lot now, it felt general, but I think it was good with some of the use cases. They did the demos quite well, and I'm not sure if they were live. Did they look live to you, the demos?
I was trying to work this out actually. I think they kind of were. You know, the ones where they've got some pre-prepared kind of scripts to just make it look
Yeah.
like things are going, but I'm not sure if it was like all fully live.
Yeah, so I felt like it was a bit long, the keynote, but I can't sit still for very long. You were
Yeah,
fine. So I left early. But then I thought the rest of the day was quite good. The workshops were quite good
yeah.
because they were live. There was some internet issues though, funnily enough. But the event itself was quite useful because you could actually see things in action. The only problem that a lot of these companies have, like even including Anthropic, Microsoft, they just struggle with naming conventions. Like
Oh
they'll
my
have
God,
Copilot
that
Studio
was
plus agents, can't build agents in the Copilot Studio plus agents, and then it was
yeah,
just all over the place. So that's something that they're trying to change, and they even admitted it themselves, right? So a few people that we spoke to said that not everyone
yeah.
was happy because it was even a learning curve for them.
It was. I mean, I've never known anything like it with Microsoft. For a company so huge
Mm.
to have such terror. I mean, I don't know who does their naming convention. It feels like it's done by some high school student who's just kind of bodged it all together. It's absolutely horrific. I think the worst one where I was sitting there scratching my head where they got a product which is Copilot, Copilot Studio Plus Agent. That's the actual name of the product, is it?
Yeah, but then you couldn't. But then you couldn't build in the Copilot Studio plus agents. You had
Yeah,
to build in the AI Foundry. And the
yeah,
funny thing is, Copilot was actually used to be called Power Virtual Agents, and
yeah.
that
I
was
remember
way
that
back.
when it
That
was
was like
part of the Power
4
Platform.
yeah, it's part of the Power Platform. So
Mm.
it was a bit confusing on that front. Um, but it was overall well. But the thing is, this is not just Microsoft, right? Because I remember Dario Amadei from Anthropic saying when they had Claude 3.5, they said, the next version might be 3.6, 3.7 because it's not like that. And then they go and release
Yeah,
3.7 themselves. So
yeah.
it seems to be this thing that they just, I don't know what it is internally that they don't feel sits right with people.
Well, I mean, Sam Altman even makes it. He makes it one of the selling points of OpenAI about how awful their naming convention is. I
Yeah.
mean, are they trying to outdo each other with how naff? Is that, can I use that word? How naff their names are. But anyway, putting that to one side, and I think we can all agree Microsoft definitely needs to take some lessons in how to name their products. I found, I mean, it was pretty cool to be at a keynote in the first place, and we sum it all up in the newsletter. There wasn't anything massively, there wasn't like any big reveal like
No.
you get at the Apple ones. But for me, it was quite interesting to really dive a bit deeper into Copilot because I always feel like Copilot is, I don't know, it's it feels like it's under like not quite as well thought of as some of
Mm.
the other kind of solutions. Like it's compromised somehow, and everyone I know who's used it said it's, and that's certainly my experience. It's, yeah, that's probably the best word, compromised, if you know what I mean. There's
Well, it's
they've
worth noting that when they absorb up some of the models and they work with some of the open source models or even like GPT 4.5, they will do their own work on it. Hence why it's slightly late. So they run their own processes through their own restrictions and the guardrails. So it
yeah,
is safe and it aligns to their philosophy.
yeah,
The problem with it is that it ends up not being as true to what the foundational models were built for. And I think
yeah,
people don't tend to like that. The thing they have going for them though is the embeddedness. So they have a lot of things. If you look on a shallow level, that seem to be quite appealing, right? The fact that they're embedded into all the Microsoft 365 apps, which is good. They've got Copilot, which is free for anyone to use. They've Copilot Studio for anyone who has a license to then build with the agents with low code, no code. Then you have what they call the AI Foundry, where you actually manage agents. You can build agents. You can test with them. Um,
yeah,
so you can have a single prompt tested against three different models. Let's say it was DeepSeek because it's open source, GPT 4.0, and then I don't know another model. You can test them against those, so that's quite cool. But the only thing
that
that I've heard from people anecdotally is that even though they have these things, they're not as good as you think. And
there
I've
is a
heard
compromise, I think, with
it's
with all of it. Like you say, they have to kind of, the advantages you get of using Copilot is that it's like compliance ready, and it's
exactly.
Microsoft. If you're Microsoft house, it's very easy to implement. On the flip side, you're right, they kind of tinker with it to make it slightly safer, but in doing so reduces some of its creativity.
Yeah, and but it's because it's built for enterprises, right? So
Yeah,
that's their target audience, and that's why it differs from cheaper tools, which might actually be better for one man bands or independent consultancies.
yeah, but I was quite interested in their whole the agent build, agent studio, or whatever they call it, Copilot Agent Studio. And I asked the question, didn't I? I said, what is the difference between this, like you've called it an agent, and a custom GPT? So for those listening who listen to the podcast a lot, you can go into Chat GPT and you can create your own custom GPTs. I think the only difference is that in the agents, you can get it to execute a task. So
Yeah,
you train it exactly the same
yeah,
with the kind of RAG mentality. You kind of train it on specific information. You give it a system prompt. You can do exactly that with custom Chat GPTs. With agents, you can then tell it to do something. Like, say, for instance, at the end of that process, to send an email to such and such, whether that be a customer. And obviously, the connections are probably a lot better, but it's not an agentic workflow per se, is it? They're very kind of much standalone agents.
so it's a standalone agent, but that the definition of an agent is something that can independently control its workflow, right?
Yeah,
In that sense, I guess it is. But you're right. Anything that happens within the Microsoft 365 environment, let's say you receive an email, it can then pick that up without you having to trigger an LLM to do something for you. So let's say it's, I don't know, pulling in a bill of quantities. You can take that information from the email, and let's say that's got to be sent to a certain person or analyzed. It can then run that for you. Now, if you want to build an actual agentic workflow beneath that, you can then take the bill of quantities, analyze it, put it through another
yeah,
piece of content or whatever it is. That's when you build the workflow. Now, when you build these things, you build them in the AI Foundry. That gives you the
yeah,
endpoint, and then that connects to Copilot Studio, which you can then connect into Teams, connect into your
yeah.
Outlook. So that's where the connection point is, and that's the main difference.
And
Just
the AI Foundry is another app within another
yeah,
fantastic naming convention.
yeah, yeah.
Pretty balling, isn't it?
And
It's
then all
pretty.
around that, they've got the whole security piece, right? So they were talking about, I've forgotten the name of it, Purview, Microsoft
Yeah,
Purview or AI
yeah,
Purview, whatever it was, and that was the security standpoint. So you have all the safety and the security in place to align with your business protocols, etc., etc. So they have thought about it from a business perspective, but you can see that explicitly is
yeah,
built
yeah,
for an enterprise, and so it might not be as cutting edge, but it has that resilience that you mentioned built into it for
yeah.
safety.
So they had some good demos. We saw things like the new Sales Agent AI, which was sort of integrating it with the
Mhm.
CRM system. We saw the
Multimodality, they're
yeah,
multimodality.
yeah, exactly. They had the AI studio showing how you can actually create some of these low code tools.
Mhm.
So I think for a lot of people, it will be their entry into utilizing AI. They also had a panel session at the end with people from who was the panel from? Somebody from Sainsbury's.
Unilever, and
Yeah.
something else. But one thing that's good worth mentioning that Microsoft actually do quite well is how they onboard onto their
Mm.
solutions. So Microsoft Learn is really good at helping you understand how to use their tools. And I think that, and you can get badges, they gamify it in certain aspects, but learning how to use the Microsoft platform to build is good. But you do need it because it is quite complicated, I think.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's just a bit confusing for
Mm.
people, even for tech people, right? I mean, we've spoken to some computer scientists who say it's
Yeah.
not exactly the easiest to navigate, but it is Microsoft. It's here to stay. It's going to be a lot of people's introduction into the world of AI,
Yeah.
and they have got some really good case studies, not least as themselves. So there was a quote which said that they've obviously deployed Copilot across their employees, and they're seeing this increase in productivity of about 10%, which doesn't
It was
sound
quite a
like
lot
a
of money,
lot.
wasn't it? They mentioned. They said it was quite a lot of money.
Yeah, because that translates to a lot of money. It was the I can't remember what his title was, Judson from Microsoft, who
Yeah,
gave
yeah,
that
a
quote.
chief commercial officer,
Yeah.
something like
So
that.
if you want to find out more about it, it's all in the newsletter. We've kind of broken down exactly what we saw there. There's some photos of what we saw there, and it was a real experience, at least from that point of view, to see one of these keynotes in action, which I hadn't been to before. So that was pretty
Mhm.
cool. Moving on, then there is not a huge amount of massive news this week, but we've got. It's probably worth looking at the Mistral. So the French company Mistral uh, have released a model a couple of weeks ago,
Yeah.
which is a little bit gone under the radar. But you've dug into it a little bit more in terms of how you can use it to unlock your project documents with AI. Do you want to sort of tell us about that one a little bit
Yeah,
more?
so the main issue with documents at the moment and AI is that when you want it to pull information, I don't know, key figures, tables, data, graphs, whatever it is from your documents, there is the likelihood that your AI can hallucinate and misinform, right? Not give you key information. And that's really annoying because if you want accuracy, you have to go back and check the work. There's no point putting it through the AI.
Yeah,
Now, what this thing does, it's a vertical OCR tool, so optical character recognition, and it's designed for exactly that, pulling information from documents, and it's supposed to be, the king of all of these technologies. So
why is it different from the OCR that we've had for decades?
it's just specialized. It's specialized right
Yeah,
because it uses I don't know, complex algorithms in the back end, but it can pull information a lot more accurately. What they claim as well that it's really fast and cost effective. So I think it was like $1 per 1,000 pages or something like that. So it's extremely cost effective, and it has both API access with uh, Mistral's ecosystem, but also you can use it within the chat. So because you get your outputs in Markdown, you can put that into like a wrapper like ChatGPT or the
yeah,
chat, which is Mistral's um, uh, equivalent. It can pull the information and it can translate it into rich context. So you have all that information. Now the key points to get across is that you can have information from your documents pulled quite accurately.
yeah.
Now, on face value, that's awesome because you can sort through a lot of information now and it's cheaper for you to run and companies will have a lot of documentation.
Mhm.
So that USP with it being vertical, that verticality was useful. Um, and the key point that they like to point out is that these vertical tools are better than generalized tools. So, you know, other OCR techniques used in combination with some language, more generalized large language models are going to be more costly and not as effective. So they
Mhm.
released these scores that Mistral themselves have released, the developers, and it outperformed a lot of the models you would assume it would do. So Microsoft OCR and no Azure OCR and a few others, as well as generalized large language models.
Is it the same technology as those, roughly the same technology as like the Microsoft
Potentially,
Azure?
yeah. I imagine it'd be slightly more specialized in that sense, since it is vertical, and they've obviously trained it on specific documentation, certain formats, certain structures. Then I saw a post on LinkedIn from Jerry Liu. So Jerry Liu is the CEO of Llama Index, I think CEO
Mhm.
founder. And I've met Jerry actually a few times now, and they're awesome, right? Because if you're a developer, you're familiar with Llama Index, Llama Cloud, and they did their own independent studies. And
And what they come
on
up with.
that, they found it didn't actually perform as well as what Mistral have claimed it to have
Yeah.
performed.
Really? Okay.
So Llama Index have a thing called Llama Pass, which can run through your documentation and pull the information out quite accurately. And I use that. Some of the things that I use or I build. But interestingly, the Llama itself has got not Llama Index have got different versions of the capabilities. So they've got a balanced one, they've got a premium one, they've got other ones.
Mm.
His team compared Mistral OCR across the balanced mode of Llama Index or Llama Pass, and it
Mm.
wasn't as effective. But Llama Pass was $2 more expensive, so $3 per 1,000 pages. Now, when compared to Llama Pass with generalized LLMs like Sonnet, 3.7, GPT-4, etc., it also performed worse against those. The best performing
Right. Okay.
was Llama Pass's premium mode, and again, this is two
But
developers.
are you comparing apples with apples? Is it effectively the same type of technology? That's what I'm trying to work out.
I'm not too sure on the back end, but it
Yeah.
seems to be. But
Mm.
obviously, Llama Pass have their own. They use open source models and all these different things. So
Mm.
it just wasn't as effective as it claimed to be. Now, the other thing that I wanted to point out was Mistral are growing in confidence because they mentioned that they don't see DeepSeek as being competitors to them because they're both open source in that sense.
Mm.
Uh, but they said that their next model will be better than DeepSeek's,
But
which
they've
they
only just released their latest model, which is
yeah. Now,
Le
wait, who has?
Chat.
Oh yeah, exactly. Well, yeah. Now, and the thing is, this coincides with France's viewpoint on where they're investing their AI infrastructure. So, you had
Mm.
the AI summit recently, the AI Action Summit, I think it was,
Yeah,
and it
yeah,
was
yeah.
held in Paris. And
The
Macron
one in
was
Paris, yeah.
there, and he mentioned 100 billion to infrastructure, AI infrastructure, and they want France to be, the hub of Europe. They are banking on Mistral doing very well because they're the key company.
Mm.
They're the biggest independent AI lab in Europe, right? And I think they're banking on that doing really well. So seeing these conflictive results, well, you're going to get it anyway.
I just
But
don't see how they're going to be able to compete with the Googles, Microsofts, and that.
the way that you compete is you have different offerings, right?
Yeah,
But
they'll be a lot more narrow. They'll go niche on things like this,
exactly.
claiming to be OCR, which for people in project delivery, it's massive, isn't it? Because what we deal with is project documents.
Well, this is exactly it. So in the project context, you can now crawl through hundreds and hundreds of pages of documentation in a much more cost-effective way.
And is that just
Also,
with the normal model? So you don't need anything special. You can just get Le Chat and you can use the
yeah, you can
OCR
upload it
within
into the
that.
chat, and it would. Yeah, so for those
Yeah,
who are looking at the equivalent chat GPT, if you were to upload a file, this is their
yeah,
version. It would use that OCR tool.
yeah, yeah. Okay.
And also, I'm not saying it was bad. Like the results are impressive and are probably alongside the average benchmarks. But it was
Yeah,
just it didn't perform as well as the others. But it's cost effective. So for
yeah,
those in projects, you have something which is cheaper, which is quick, and it can crawl for your documentation, including tables and potentially graphs and these things. So it's definitely one to try out. I wouldn't say overlook
yeah.
it. I think it's definitely a powerful tool still.
Cool. Well, it's just another one to be aware of. So I'm just conscious we've got quite a bit to cover. So other things in tech. So that's in the newsletter, and you've done quite a big blog on that as well.
Yeah.
The other kind of noteworthy things for people to be aware of, which we won't go into a lot of detail, but they're in the newsletter, is that AI. Google have released a AI mode, which is in their kind of workspace suite, like Sheets and Docs, with enhanced search, enhanced data analytics. Um, we've got Larry Page from ex Google is back in the AI game
Mhm.
with a new venture looking at AI driven product design for manufacturing, specifically for manufacturing. And then on the OpenAI front, they're saying that their latest model 4.5 is going to be made available to Plus users pretty soon. So those are some of the other things to be aware of. Oh, and of course, OpenAI Sora, for those in the UK, we've now got access to Sora at long last. So if anyone wants to do text to video.
Mhm.
So moving on to project news then, the one we've covered this week in the newsletter is actually about the RICS, the Royal Institution of Chartered Surveyors, which is my institution. They've actually launched consultation on a new AI standard in surveying. And I've put this one in here, number one, because it's quite a big deal for any surveyors listening in. But I actually was part of the working group for this. So that's part of the reason. But I think it was important because it's important for institutions like the Royal Institution of Chartered Surveyors to take a lead in this, because a lot of people are grappling with what AI means and how to deal with it, and they're putting together this uh, this standard that tells people effectively. It gives them guidance on how to integrate artificial intelligence within the built environment, and
Yeah.
it looks at all the, I guess, sometimes the more boring things, the ethical considerations, transparency, risk management, compliant confidentiality. So, but it's actually a very, very good tool. So, if there's any survey, I think it's up open for public consultation. So, anyone can go to the RICS website and read it and provide their comments. And particularly for anyone who are members of the RICS, I really do encourage you to go on and give your guidance and give your thoughts on the current draft, because it's only by people actually interacting with this draft and this consultation version that we'll get the best possible version out as a final document. But yeah, that's all I really want to say on that, just to make people very aware of it. It's in the newsletter. We'll try and put it in the show notes as well. But what do you think? Is that a positive step, Yoshi?
100%. I think we said this
Yeah.
a few months ago that we needed associations to actually provide more guidance on how to use AI safely. And I know,
Mm,
you said like the safety part might be boring, but in industries where risk is, can be huge, I think you have to have those guidances or the governance in place to be able to help you navigate it effectively. And
yeah,
just understanding what outputs you can rely on, trying to find traceability, transparency, learning different tools, how they fit in. I think all of this is key, and I think it can become a bit of a swamp when you try to work through that, and you're hearing so much information from different
yeah,
perspectives.
yeah,
So
exactly.
having a central perspective with authority, I think is useful for people to just to help them navigate through.
Yeah, exactly. And I think going quite narrow niche for particular industries is quite good as well, because there's a lot of general
Yeah.
documentation out there. We talked about the AI action plan and the various other kind of standards, but there's people from certain professions, and I'm sure it'll be the same for other professions as well, where you need to there'll be specific concerns around that profession that you need a bit more of a narrow answer on, that delves a bit deeper into it. And I think that's what this does, because, like, take for instance, surveyors have got specific issues that other professions wouldn't, particularly, being out on site and how you deal with being out in the wild, as it were. So no, it's a very good start, and I was very honoured and pleased to be part of it, actually. Um, so moving on then to actually, I need you to tell me a bit about this, because I haven't had a chance to really review this. But there's another kind of deep seek moment on the horizon, isn't there, when it comes to productivity? Do you want
Mm.
to tell us about Manus?
Yeah, so I saw this video on Twitter, and it was a bot, or it was a computer which had 50 or so, like virtual machines, desktops, screens running, and it was doing 50 tasks at once. And I saw it, and I was like, "Oh, this is a bit interesting." And
Yeah.
uh, and sometimes it can seem a bit like a gimmick, um, but then a lot more information has come out about it. And
Mm,
what got everyone's attention wasn't the fact that it was a smart model, because it's several models in the back end. It's an agentic architecture,
yeah.
um, but was the fact that it was doing it all simultaneously. And if you look carefully, all the tasks were somewhat distinct. So they've termed this the first general AI agent, meaning it can do a generalization of tasks, multiple different things.
Mm,
Um, and they said that it's so, just to frame this properly, current large language models or the tools you're using at the moment are great at creating ideas, idea generation. But this thing is actually there to drive you real results. It does end-to-end task execution. So, for instance, they showed one example, which was um, capturing financial information like stocks and then tracking it over time, and then providing a report with graphs and actual visual charts. And it did that.
mm,
Another one was, I think it was booking some sort of hotel or something like that, or there was a few other use cases, right? But they were all spot on. Now, that
really?
wasn't a demo from the creator, or I think it was the creator. But then I actually looked at some reviews recently of people who, outside of China, who have independently tested, and it was able to post to X. It was able to do research and post to X. Some of the thing about vibe coding. It was able to pull API cost information from Anthropic, and some other competitors and pull the API cost through and put it in a report.
Did you have to provide it with the API, or it actually goes and
No, no,
searches?
it did it
This
all
is
by
this is
itself.
the mad thing. This is wild, isn't it?
So it did it all itself, and it will give you two displays. We'll have the instructions on the left, and it will have the Manus's viewpoint on the right. So basically, like if you're
Mm.
screen sharing and you can see your desktop, but that was on the right hand side. And when you gave it a task, it would actually open up a note, write down its to-do list, and then work through the task.
Really?
And then you can,
Wow.
and that was it. And one of them was to do with resumes. So they were uploading resumes, and it was consistently analyzing it. Someone then said, "Can you give me this information within a website?" I did that. Fine. Now, the one thing I had problems with Twitter was that it wasn't posting because apparently it isn't allowed to post because it's a social media account. But then if you just say to it, post anyway, it would do it. Now, this is the funny thing, right? The funny thing was when it was pulling information from all the big tech players about their API pricing, guess what company blocked it from happening because they had like a capture?
Go on.
OpenAI.
Yeah. Why does that not surprise me?
They're the ones doing the deep research, but they blocked it themselves. But so this agent, and this is what I'm saying to you, when it now it starts to think, and just to exemplify what a chain of thought is it went to OpenAI to try and grab the prices, it couldn't get it.
Mm.
So typically you think, okay, it's failed. It might have some other conditional things it can follow, or it won't give you the information. It said itself, right, finding a new plan, and then it actually just went to Google and searched it and found the information.
But so it still found it in the end.
Yeah, I found it in the end. It was an older
What?
version, but it still pulled through the information. And then the other one, there were other examples, but it was quite good. Now, uh, powering this thing apparently is 7 different models, but then I've heard information on X saying that it's powered by Claude 3.7. But I mean, why not, right? That's really good of applications and running these different things. And they're going to publish those models to be open sourced. So, but it's really hard to question these things when they do release them as open source, and you can look under the hood under your own volition.
Mm.
Um,
Mm.
so that was really cool.
Have you actually used it yourself, or you just
No,
seen
no,
these
there's a waiting list.
demos?
You can access it, but I
Yeah,
think
I've put myself on the waiting list as well, but I think it's
yeah,
going
there's
to
a
be a
waiting list.
while.
But there are things on YouTube. People say you can get different open source versions currently, so
Yeah.
people can check that out if they're really interested. But do you know what I find really interesting about this?
Go
And
on.
it's going to lend back into the debate that I always bring up around automation and augmentation. So this is part of the Chinese AI ecosystem, and one
Mm.
pattern that we're noticing is that they don't really seem to care about augmentation. They're fully in the camp of automation and autopilots rather than augmentation and copilots, right? And that's
Yeah,
evident.
they're skipping the gap. They're
Yeah,
skipping that step straight into. But you know what you said about OpenAI as well, because this is direct competitor to their operator thing that
yeah,
is out for beta at the moment, isn't it?
yeah. It is, but the thing is,
It's basically what it does.
it is what it does, and
Yeah.
it can do it better because it's full execute, and you can because you can interrupt this thing halfway through and talk through it, etc., etc. But what I like about it is that it's continuously disruptive.
Mm.
It stops big tech, and I think big tech, the Western companies like OpenAI having a monopoly and driving costs up. Like DeepSeek, what did DeepSeek do when it came onto the scene? Right, made everyone panic, and then it made Sam Altman play his GPT 4.5 hand, which was
Too
very
early by
high,
the
and
sounds of things.
yeah, and then they gave more credits to deep research and all these. So there was a cascading effect which starts
Mm.
to democratize and provide accessibility into these models. And the same thing happens here. Everyone's going to welcome it.
Yeah, well, it might get them to move on with the operator, because this is going to go. I've put myself down for the waiting list, because this is where it comes for people to actually start using automation AI to start doing some of their job.
Yeah,
You
yeah. And
know,
this is so I posted. So when I posted on LinkedIn about this, I actually didn't focus it on Manus as such. Um, what it inspired me to post about was how we think as humans,
yeah,
because I was saying, we think about augmentation as doing more on a project, or we can also think about it as doing more projects simultaneously. And the whole screen, the multiple different screens, had me thinking, well, you can manage multiple different parts of a project or multiple projects on these screens and have these agents doing it for you. But then if these things can do that, and then you have new developing emerging AI like neurosymbolic AI where it starts to understand symbols or
mm,
color and all these things. And then you also have AI, causal AI, which starts to understand why things happen, not just look at data and infer. Those
mm,
things will start to elevate the AI's capabilities to what we can do now, and we have to elevate our metacognition. So all the time
mm,
that you have sitting back and you see the AI coming up to you in the screen saying, "Oh, should we push back this because I don't know, the supply chain fell through or a contractor couldn't do a bit of work," and you put yes, you're not going to be a button clicker. You can't sit there being a button clicker. You have
No.
to think differently, and so we have to then start to bring the intangible into the tangible through our thought. So what I was encouraging is people have to understand we have to reach new levels of thought. Otherwise, these things are going to automate what we do.
Yeah, because
And it's as clear as that for me. And I don't know. We'll see where these things play out, but it's moving so fast. I mean, since 2025, we had DeepSeek 2025, and then Mana's come out in 2025, and
well,
then
we're only in March, and we're only at the
only
beginning of
March,
March.
exactly. And look how fast it is.
Yeah, we've got literally, operator up and running in beta. We've got Manus now in waiting list mode. So let's fast forward to till June. Say all these things are out there available for everyone. We're all going to be using, automated agents
Yeah,
doing
and you'll also,
huge
some
parts of
people are
our work.
saying,
This is going to be bigger than when GPT dropped, isn't it?
yeah. So the prediction for me is like, you have agents. This would be the year of agents. Next year is
Yeah,
going to be, the year of swarms or fleets of agents. Then we're
yeah,
going to hit AGI the year after.
yeah.
So don't bookmark that.
Yeah, no,
And
too
then,
late. You've said it now. It's recorded. In fact, it's live. So,
but then the other thing as well that came out was the whole MCP thing. I'm hearing this
yeah.
everywhere, right? MCPs.
So just describe what MCPs are for those
So
listening.
effectively, the way that I took it is you have your large language model which can take action in external applications. So not just connect to the data, but actually be able to actually take actions like post in a Slack work channel, for instance, and can actually
Or
connect that. But it provides the context. So if you have multiple APIs connected to a single context hub, it can then pull that information into a single thing, and you can make use of that. Now we'll explain it better. You put me on the cuff, but it's effectively what it is. It's that, and it's blowing up. And I spoke to Rithvik about this, and he was telling me, "No, it's been out for a while." And I thought, well, I've just seen it on Twitter, and everyone's raving about MCPs.
is this the one I've seen the video where it's controlling about 50 social media accounts at the same time and posting to it? And,
Oh,
you know,
potentially, maybe, yeah. But
yeah,
the
I think it
idea
was
is people
that.
are doing it with their voice. So people are just saying, you know, write me a poem and post it in a Slack channel, and then it will just do it, and it will come back saying watch that channel. So you could just sit on your sofa and,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
just
yeah.
work.
It's utopia, isn't it? That's where we're heading towards. But yeah, do check it out. You've written an article there as well about Manus, haven't you?
I have. I've written
Yeah,
articles about both, and both articles go into more detail.
yeah, cool.
Yeah.
So those are the big stories. The only other ones to mention is we'll probably cover this next week. Is there's a lot of talk. I don't know if you've seen this about OpenAI having like 20 grand a month AI agents for business. So
Oh yeah.
specific agents for
Yeah.
enterprises with pricing tiers of up to 20k per month. Anywhere between £2,000 per month to £20,000 a month.
But
So
is this depending on the depth of thought, the depth of thought?
yeah, I guess so. And what they're basically saying, there'll obviously be some value to it. If you're charging someone £20,000 per month, then it's got to be replacing somebody who's you know earning at least £10,000 a month, right, to make it worthwhile.
Yeah.
So they're obviously confident enough, and this goes back to Manus and operator and everything else we've been talking about. It's so obvious what's coming and what's happening
Yeah.
with this.
But I tell you what I heard the other day, and it was someone saying when you speak to ChatGPT in any of these, non-reasoning or reasoning models, and you ask it a question about something you don't know, it sounds genius, right?
Mm.
But if you're an expert in a field and you ask it a question about a thing that you do know, you'll find that it often misses things that you would think, why hasn't it picked it up? And
Yeah,
that's something
yeah,
to ponder. So when they're saying you're having these 20 grand or whatever it is subscriptions, I'd imagine it should give you an agent which can still impress those who are experts.
yeah. It's going to have to be worth it. I mean, that's a lot of money for. I don't look. They're rumors at the moment. We don't even know if it's true, but I think we're going to get to that point where these companies are going to be
Mm.
confident enough to be able to put those price points out there because it's going to provide that much value to the end user.
Yeah, but I think that's what we realize, right? The whole idea of AGI, general intelligence, might not come from a single model, might come from multiple different agents. You're just
Yeah,
having
that's what it's
you're
looking
just
like.
having different domain expertise agents who are specific to certain industries or sectors or disciplines, and then you just have one that coordinates.
Yeah, yeah. Interesting times, but I think that's it. I mean, there's the whole load of other little bits, stories like iteration stories within the newsletter, but I think that's covered most of the big ones, hasn't it, for this
Yeah,
week?
yeah,
What's
yeah.
happening next? What's happening next week? Is there anything important to look forward to?
No, there's. I know we mentioned it before, but there's the whole Amazon model that's supposed to be coming out.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't
yeah.
know
I've got
when.
I think I put
DeepSeek, the new DeepSeek as well has been teased. DeepSeek, 17th of March maybe for DeepSeek
yeah.
R2.
Yeah, no, we have got a little bit in the newsletter about the new AI Amazon reasoning model.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's all just been teased at the moment. But yeah, maybe we'll have that next week to talk about. But anything else you want to cover, mate?
No, all good.
Cool. Well, for those who tuned in and listening live, thank you. Like, we're just trialing this out at the moment for the next few weeks before we work out exactly how to do it and bring it to the masses. So it would be really great to get some feedback. And for those listening on the podcast, Monday 7:15, tune in. This is the time that we're going to be doing it, unless we tell you otherwise. So do try and tune in, because then you can actually ask questions live. And I believe we might even be able to bring you in and have you on screen, but that's only if you want to.
Every
So
Monday,
until
less drama than EastEnders.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So who have we got on Friday then? For those listening to the podcast, I think we've got William, haven't we? William Christensen.
Yeah, William
Yeah,
Christensen.
I mean, you're in for a treat with the spotlight on Friday, so do tune into that one. We've got somebody. All I'll say to you is he's got an incredible story about what to do with the sticky note. That's
Yeah.
second time we've got. so tune in for that. If you want to find out more about what you can do with a sticky note, do tune in. Mate, thank you very much for your time. Have a lovely evening. And to all the listeners, see you soon. Bye-bye. Cool.
That was good.
That was all right. Yeah, I don't think